Hello, everyone, and welcome to the evening session. We will start with a presentation by Flávia Ávila, behavioral economist with 15 plus years of experience studying and investigating individual and group behavior using both lab and field experiments. Since 2005, led and designed 23 field experiments, randomized controlled trials, while working in consulting, marketing, finance, strategic planning, and pricing intelligence positions. Founder and CEO of the consulting firm InBehavior Lab and chief editor of the website Economia Comportamental, if I pronounce correctly, designed to promote the area of behavioral and experimental economics in Brazil. Please welcome Flávia.
Thank you very much, Anya. You really did a very complete presentation. So thank you very much, everyone here. Very glad to be here with you guys. Also, thanks for the invitation and all this team that I know have worked very much to make this happen. So I'm going to show a little bit about one of our cases. I tried to also to bring a little bit of the methodology, how we adapted to Brazil. So let me share with you guys a little bit more details, and in the end we'll have space for questions, so they're very, very welcome. Second. Here, hopefully everyone can see. So I'm going to talk about the Heineken case. It's a case and a study that have been conducted in many other countries, and we were very happy to be invited to conduct here in Brazil. And I already told a little bit about myself. I just want to use this audience also to thank Warwick professors that were very helpful when we were back then in 2015, that the area was almost unknown here in Brazil, and they gave us, we could translate some of their texts to a Brazilian guide that we did back then, and has been very important for us here, both in a Master of Behavioral Economics we created in 2016, and also to promote the area here. And also thank Chris Tama, my tutor and professor of University of Nottingham, and many others that helped this make this happen. So InBehavior Lab was built in 2015. I'm gonna say sorry in advance for my English, but hopefully you understand, and if not, please contact me. I'll be very happy to share other informations. So we were founded in 2015 with the idea specifically with the focus of laboratory. I was, before going to a master in behavioral economics in Nottingham, I was conducting the private market a lot of experiments. So the idea when we built InBehavior Lab was to conduct lab and field experiments in the field and try to test initiatives here in Brazil. So we rely on behavioral science to build the best possible solution, and also inspired by many others here that have conducted worldwide methodologies to test, understand the consumer, understand the behavior, explore, investigate how and why people in organizations make decisions, the biases, the barriers, the frictions we have, and how we can design interventions and also test if they will work both in Brazil but also everywhere in the world. Many of them, I think, was inspired by others, and I believe we can join forces everywhere, because many of the behaviors, it's important, the cultural adaptation, but many of them, as we start testing, are very common in other countries too. So one of our main bases is the experimental organization as a source of innovation. So the importance of doing a good behavior diagnosis, to mapping biases, barriers, frictions to generate behavior change. So we usually generate samples also. So since the beginning, we know the public we are going to test, and we can deep dive on that, create quick and simple interventions, get accurate feedback and analysis, data analysis. We focus a lot also not only in the intervention, but how we can implement. So we are known for going to the field and really training, make the study and the research and the experiment happen. So also how we can use nudges and interventions in the people that are involved in the experiment and has an empirical culture. So if you have evidence-based studies, research, experiments, it's most probable you have other evidence-based solutions. So the idea here is like how we can use all the information we have from consultants from different areas and pillars in Brazil and abroad to design interventions that make sense, and also to train people to design their own studies, interventions, behavioral design, journey mapping, and really make a difference both in public policies, but also in the private sector and academia. So the laboratory part, we have a methodology that we use to design the intervention. I'll tell a little bit more about how we did with Heineken. We have also some interactive collective games to see how the biases work in each different audience, and also a system of integrated tools that we can make this inventory and behavioral diagnosis. So what we do usually when we are designing intervention, inspired with many of others methodologies like tests from behavior science team, basic, and others, it's idea which behavior we want to target, what are behavioral influences there. We use cards with behavioral biases that were built in 2014, so they are very, it's a really known methodology of InBehavior lab where you have the concept and the cases in the back. And also we have now with the pandemic, we could build our transport, our methodology to the online. So we have been conducting many or more experiments. So for InBehavior lab was very nice. Also this moment, I know it's very tragic, hard, but also we have Brazil, like it's huge, and we have consultants in the US, in London, in Uruguay, and many other places. So having also these methodologies online made it possible much more complex experiments. So I'm going to tell you guys about Heineken Case in a world without pandemic. We were going to conduct the Heineken 2.0 experiment for scaling on April 2020. As you guys know, it wasn't possible, but we were almost in the field, so it was very inspiring also to talk about how we could scale these experiments. The target conduct here was drink and drive, so we wanted the drivers not to drink, but they were, imagine how hard it is because they are already in the bar, and we were mapping the influences there. And it's interesting it's important to say here that Innovia, Edelman, and Heineken Global had already conducted the UK experiment using some of these nudges. So it was very nice to be inspired by them, also in how we could conduct the study. And it was very nice to have access to all this information. And the idea here was once they are in the bars, many influences happen, and like social proof and others, and how we can use that. So they're already there, some already drove to the place. So how we can use the right moment to incentivize people that were already thinking of going to the bar, drinking on a Friday night, to think about them not drink. So some activation of behavior influences we did is commitment. People signed the declaration, a driver's pledge that we call, and they would sign and they would have French fries, some snacks free in the bar. So the idea was to make it more present. I'll go through other nudges too. We had a nudges along the driver's path, loss aversion, present bias, and then we used a randomized controlled experiment. We had already a big experience in field experiments, randomized controlled trials. So I'm very happy to say that our experiment was very robust. Many professors that I know have seen the results, the methodology, And I think we did a very nice job in bringing science and the methodology to bars. And this was made with a huge team at the Behavior Lab, data scientists, economists, psychologists, communication specialists. So it was a case with many hands and a lot of inspiration from everywhere. And then I'll show you now the video that shows how it worked a little bit. It's translated to English. Then afterwards, I'll tell more about the methodology and why I can say that was statistically significant, robust, and very nice. I'm very happy to share with you guys this study today. And it was approved. I had the approval from Heineken, so very few audience have seen in detail as you're going to see today.
Quando vejo amigos meus que não estão bebendo, tomando aguinha, eu chego e toma fogo lá, que bom.
O que a gente quer falar é com um motorista que chegou lá no bar dirigindo e é influenciado pelo ambiente a beber. Uma das intervenções era o juramento do motorista. Quando o motorista assinava esse papel, a ideia era que ele parasse para pensar naquele momento.
E aí, automaticamente, você ganha uma porção da casa. Quando a gente chegou na mesa, também tinha um cardápio específico para o motorista.
Quando a gente faz uma intervenção comportamental, a gente quer sim mudar aquele comportamento na hora, mas também fazer ela refletir para o futuro.
So yes, this was the experiment. So a complex place to do experiments for sure. And I'm going to show a little bit the steps, so it could be very nice and work. We did in 2 cities of Brazil, so both in São Paulo, a huge city in the capital, and also Porto Alegre in the south of Brazil. There were 18 bars and 2 controls, so 2 bars that didn't have nudges, and I'll show a little bit the methodology in a minute. And we had a sample, we had a minimum sample, and we could do this huge work with 3 days of control group and 3 treatment days, and we could have a nice result. So when you build a study like that, of course, we had all the analysis of previous documentation, sharing with everyone about how it happened in the UK, and then we went to the step 2, like the choice of bars, adaptation of control and treatment week nudges, experimental design, KPIs, data analysis, questionnaire adaptation. And then we go to engagement, implementation, staff training, treatment week, and others. I think many here have already conducted behavioral interventions, behavior experiments. So we know that preparations, everything, and also we have to have this training, make people do what they have to do. So in a very short period of time, we can have scalable and usable results. So how was experimental design in Brazil? We first had these 18 bars with week 1, control 1. So we had a control group 1 week in October of 2018. Then the next, no one knew, only the owners of the bars knew that was happening. They received some t-shirts, green t-shirts, and some things that were with things that were written that were not important. So we would have tried to take out the effect of everyone having like a t-shirt, Heineken t-shirt and everything. So we would be more cautious with the result. Training happened the 2nd week, and then we had the treatment week. So after a week of training, we had the week with nudges. So we had 16 bars with nudges and also 2 bars as a control group. why we did that. Like, it was hard to implement, because usually when you have a nice intervention, a nice action, we say that the private sector, but also happens in our clients in public sector, it's harder to convince them to have a control group than the treatment. So it's so amazing, let's do it in everyone. So it was very hard to get to this part here, but then we had 3 main indicators. The control one, in 1 week, versus the treatment group. We had the treatment group and the control group in the same week, so the 16 bars and the 2 bars, and also the validity check between the control 1 and control 2. So what happened here? If the control 1 and control 2 was not significant, so the behavior was similar in the week before the treatment, and also when it was happening the day was happening, we could be more comfortable that the treatment, the result, the change was real. So we had, how do you calculate? I know probably most of you guys know the sample. So we had to estimate how many drivers that drink we have in Brazil. When we did the control group, we saw it was 54% in the control week. And based on that, we did some scenarios of power and how, if we had at least 20% of behavior change, 1,000 would be enough. And it was around that we got. So that's why I think we could get a very nice analysis and everything. So how we did it? Yes, we know that the reality in the UK and Brazil, it's very, very different. But how we did step by step? Yes, we adapted the methodology and the experimental design. So we adapted both the questionnaires, how we would capture this data, how we would measure the KPIs, but also we adapted the nudges. So we got the nudges that the UK had used, and we translated those nudges, and also we added some. For example, we created, one of the nudges was the pledge, the driver's pledge I told you guys, but then we created another nudge to make this more easy for Brazilians to understand that was a common behavior. We translated the exit questionnaire, making adaptations with the experience of our team. We had a new criteria because it would be very expensive to ask everyone that got out of the bar. And then we said, why are we getting everyone? So let's get only the drivers. So what happens, like when they got out of the bar, they had some questions, and I'll tell you guys soon. And then they could say, like, I'm driving, I'm not driving, in a very distracting way. So if the guy was not driving, they would finish the questionnaire very soon. And also in the UK, it was asked, what did you drink, how did you get here, and other questions. In Brazil, they had a tablet where they could like answer, and so we would mitigate some if they don't feel comfortable and all. We had also in the end of the questionnaire, they identified the nudges. They did visualize, and they had special gifts for everyone. So some adaptations, but there is a huge adaptation that we had to make, because by then we didn't have Heineken Zero in Brazil. So how would we do? Because in the UK you said, okay, don't drink the alcohol, the Heineken, normal Heineken, drink Heineken Zero, but we didn't have in Brazil. And those bars that were doing the experiment were only Heineken sponsored. They had only Heineken. So what we had to do with all the team and Heineken team too, we created a menu, a driver's menu with non-alcoholic drinks that I'll show you guys in a minute. So we could see if people would really think about, oh, I'm driving, I want drink. And also we thought water and soft drinks wouldn't be enough. So first, the driver's pledge. What was the driver's pledge? It was like, sign the driver's pledge. Yes, I'm driving. I won't consume alcohol drinks. So they got to the table, and the barman would ask, or they would see a sign in the table, And if they sign in, they got like French fries. That's very common in Brazil. They would get for free. So the idea here is that you put your name so you can think. It's a public compromise also. So the idea was a driver's pledge by US snack. Yeah, so different snacks from different bars. Mainly was French fries. This one had a special one. So they got without asking. So the barman wouldn't say, oh, you're drunk, so you need to pay the French fries. No, the idea was if they only sign it, this would make it possible. They would receive right away. And the Brazilian nudges created were like, the idea was to adapt. Many of the experiments are created for weird cultures. So, and I tested like in scenarios that are not very similar to the Brazilian or Latin American countries. And we created, one of them was the mural. This mural, people that signed the pledge would put it in the entrance of the bar, and they would say here, and they would put their names. It was not mandatory, but they could put in the mural as each person that signed it was invited to put in the mural. Also, we had the driver's menu, as I told you guys, that non-alcoholic drinks. So these ones, they have 3 non-alcoholic drinks that we also in our training, we trained how they would say and the nudges, what are nudges, how it will happen. But also we had like a step-by-step of how doing the non-alcoholic drinks, because by then in Brazil, it was not very common to have in the bar. So we thought it was important to have something that looked cool, that person would like to have in their hands, but not have alcohol. So we did this, and it was very nice, this idea of the driver's menu, because as the person got to the table and we said, oh, who is the driver here? And they would say, oh, me. Oh, we have a special menu for you. And as most of you guys that are behavior science know, the idea was not to sell the drinks, but especially like, oh, this is my menu, so I shouldn't look in the other one. So the availability heuristic, I think, was very important here. And this was a main nudge. Some bars adapted for different, look this, how nice, it's Olívio in São Paulo, so they adapted for nudges, different nudges. And also we had, it's very common in Brazil, valet parking. So we had in the valet parking saying, oh, are you taking your friend home? It's simple. When you drive, never drink. Yeah. So the idea here. So when they get to the bar, they leave the key with the valet parking person, and then they have this. Also, like we had outside of the bars, other nudges talking a lot about if you're a driver, ask for the non-alcoholic drinks. If you're taking a friend home, try don't drink and drive. We had another nudge, Brazilian nudge in the Heineken, so saying, is there anyone driving your group? Please ask for our non-alcoholic drinks. So in the Heineken. The idea is here, like the importance we have seen for the last years, but since I have been working in this area before in Behavior Lab, the importance of cultural adaptation. When we say that, it's like I worked a lot with contact centers all over Brazil. And when I'm saying like Latin America, in Brazil, the behaviors are very different, the South, the Northeast, the North. So we love the field, and we go to the field, and as I told you guys, the diagnosis is the most important part, and how we can adapt also for each part of Brazil. What was amazing that we had like both the control groups, the robustness checks worked, the validity, and we had a 25% reduction in drivers that didn't drink and drive in the bars we had the nudges. So it's huge. It's bigger than any public policy known in this area. So how we do it? Like we do, like many of you guys also do. We start. We go. We check every day how much is the sample that we already have. We do all the statistical analysis. This database is auditable, so the results are very consistent, and we saw here that the results were bigger with people with 35 years or less. Also, just showing you guys that some of you guys are more academic. Also, the idea of the control group. So there wasn't a very big difference in control 1, control 2. So the 2 weeks before in the week it was happening the experiment, and we saw a huge difference, 36%, when we compared the control group of the same day with the treatment. So we were happy with that. And also other interesting data. This one was very nice. It was like we asked from 0 to 10 if they would put a number, how easy it was to them to find water, beer, juices, non-alcoholic beer, alcoholic drinks, and all. And it was very nice because the control and the treatment didn't change much. So it was no significant change of beer and alcoholic drinks. They saw the same in the bar. But when we thought about water, it was huge, the difference. Juices, non-alcoholic beer, and non-alcoholic drinks, they really declared that they found more, it was more, the ease of obtaining was higher in only those groups. So I think other variables made us very happy and safe, not safe. Happy that it was robust and we could count on that data, because another very, very important data is that there were many nudges, but what happens that we saw which nudges after they left the bar, they would mark which nudges they saw, and we saw that if very few nudges, the impact didn't change much. So that's the idea. So results were very similar if you used 3, 2 nudges and not all the 10 nudges. So we went deeper on this, and it was a very nice result. Also, we did a probate analysis, regression analysis, and we saw that this effect size was very much bigger when they signed the driver's pledge. And also when they saw this little blackboard, that was the blackboard that said, like, ask the barman for how you can get the free drinks. We have here the difference between bars, but this was very, as academics, it was very nice because many of the bars had a reduction very frequent, very similar. So that was one thing that we wanted to check. And also the people that had more, a percentage of drink and driving, not significant or over, were the both bars that were control groups. So it was very interesting. And then I already went by time. I was going to talk about using behavioral science for sustainable diets that we did with WWF, and a huge work that have been done with Soma Vantagens, is a company that we love. And during the pandemic, we made a project designing nudges to people to recycle more. And now we are working with some students also at the UPenn in a design challenge to aprimorate and scale to whole Salvador in Bahia in the Northeast. So we really admire this client, this partner, and I would like to share with you guys. I think I went a little bit over the time, and the most important always are the questions. So let me stop sharing here. And please feel free to ask anything about the methodology, the data. It will be very nice to go in detail.
Yes, so there are a couple of ways to ask questions. You can either post your question in the questions tab, or you can raise your hand, and then we will allow you to go on stage and ask your question in person. But in the meantime, since we're waiting for the questions to appear, I have a question regarding the methodology of the experiment. So were the bars randomized when you were choosing them from the first control into second control and the treatment group?
Yes, totally randomized. And also the bars were chosen before our visit of our team, both academic and consultants, to see if they were more stable between them. So we only have this 18, it was 20, but 2 of the bars didn't open that period. but we saw how we did the journey mapping, if it was possible to put the nudge, if it was possible to get the data. So as soon as we had the 20 bars, the 18 in the end, we randomized. So we didn't know which one would get in each group, and this was important for the experimental design.
And were the nudges between the bars also randomized, or were the nudges like the same in every bar?
Yeah, no, they were almost the same. The idea here, and also we have exchanged ideas with the World Bank and the UK consultants that did. The idea here is if you have the opportunity to do such a complex experiment and get very nice data and everything, if you do in a level of nudges, we would have to have such much bigger sample and much more bars, and I think we would lose the control that helped us to get those results. So the idea was we had every time that you had the beginning of the night, a person would go there and see in the bar, like a person for an hour, go and they would see, oh, this nudge is on place, this nudge is on place, this nudge is on place, and they would send us. So that was a nice part of the because 3 days bars crazy during the night, so had to check that the nudges were in place. And also we had some students that we have a master program here since 2016, that they were our eyes in the field because they already knew us, the researchers. So we had some ghost client. It's that in English? Ghost clients, like the students were there in the bars.
Okay.
They didn't know that we were there, but giving us details so everything would go smoothly.
All right, then we have a couple of questions. The first one isn't really a question, it's more of a comment that the use of the 2 control groups given your methods is quite brilliant, very elegant. And then we have a question. How did you measure who was drink driving versus who wasn't?
Perfect. When they left the bar, we would have a research collector data. Also, I forgot the name in English, but then they would have the iPad, and they would we would ask in a very not straight away the question. They would say, oh, how you got there? By Uber, by taxi, by bicycle, by walking?
Yeah.
And then they would answer that, and some other questions to distract them if they said they had gone there by Uber. And then if the person said, okay, I came driving, then he continued the questionnaire. It was a little bit longer, but not too long. And then they would say, oh, you drink some soft drinks like non-brand. Did you drink this? Water, non-alcoholic drinks. And then they would put how many they did from each. It was very easy. And afterwards, our team would calculate, okay, this guy said in the beginning that he came driving, and also says he drink a beer. So then we would calculate. But it was we were very careful not to bias the results.
I see. Then we have a very connected question, which is, how did you eliminate the possibility of respondents lying? Since drink driving is perceived to be bad, they would have higher motivation to lie about drinking.
Yeah, that was the idea. In Brazil, the percentage is much higher. So when they left the bar, they would say, oh, can you answer these questions? You have a gift. But they didn't see that was Heineken. Like, nothing was related to Heineken. It was the team that was collecting the data. So, you have received a gift. And then they would answer this way, a lot of distracting questions. Only the last question was, oh, did you see these images? And they would say the nudges they saw in the bar, and they would put that was important for us, but was the last questions. So I think they didn't have any incentive to lie in this case, because it was And we had 1,000 people answering also, so the sample was high. So this helped a lot us to analyze if there was any bias, selection bias, and all.
All right, the next question is, how far apart were the bars? I mean, treatment and control.
How apart? Okay, that's great. The control groups, this was, you said we randomized, and we did. But in Porto Alegre, in the south of Brazil, there were 3 bars that were participating. They were closed, so couldn't be them. Yeah, so it was one that was a little bit further. So there were no contagious. So they didn't know about they didn't know about each other, because we trained all of them, both in the headquarters of Heineken in Sao Paulo, but also in the bars in other places. And the ones that were the control groups, they had a different training. We didn't mention anything, so they didn't have any incentive to. The only incentive was like, oh, you're participating in a nice experiment that will be aired, and this video had over 4 million views. So it was more in this idea, and the InBehavior team was very, very close to that. And we have done many field experiments RCTs, so we try to make them motivated and try to make as similar as possible between bars. And so we had and go there. So our team was still 2 a.m. in the hotel saying, so we were not drinking, everyone saying, nice, Heineken experiment. So yeah, that it wasn't that looks much better than it was. Not really, because we are a group of behavioral scientists. So imagine like the opportunity of doing this study and see the robustness and see the data. So we were very excited, much more if we were drinking. So many of you guys here know what I'm talking about. Like, it's very vitiating when you see the data and it's making sense. So one thing that I can say, we have a PhD, already PhD consultant that did the analysis. And when we got the data, the whole data, he's called, oh, there is something very wrong. I'm so worried. And we were going to film the video, because the video was filmed with no one saying, no one knowing that they were filmed. No, I said, oh, the data looks so nice. Must we have something wrong? Do you know? And we were checking if it was really real, the result we were doing, and we did many robustness checks. So we still don't have an article in English. We have a conference in Brazil that we presented, but Heineken Global is checking with others, and we will hopefully soon will have an article in English so I can share with you guys.
Okay. Now we have Clarissa, who wants to ask a question in person, so I will hand her the microphone.
Great.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure. Listen, congratulations. That is tremendous, tremendous results, and so applicable to many, many other areas. I can't thank you enough for those results. One of the questions I had is I wanted to understand better the incentivized portion. Was that used across all controls and all RCT? Or did you also measure the impact of having no incentives? Okay, so that's
we didn't. First, Clarissa, very nice to meet you. I saw first you are Brazilian, we met at Clubhouse. Yes. And I said, oh my God, such an amazing work, guys. So to check, I'm so happy. hopefully soon we'll chat in more detail. I would love to know more about your work. But we had the nudges. The control groups didn't have the driver's pledge, so they didn't have incentive for any behavior because we wouldn't know how to measure. Yeah, or you get this, and then you have the French fries. But one question we have between us, and we were going to test in the scalable experiment that didn't happen to 2020, was how we could scale that, the driver's pledge, and having the French fries, and the idea was to scale to all Brazil. So in summing up, we had in all the bars the driver's pledge. Some of the bars used more, some less. But also we had a appropriate analysis of how many of them mentioned in the end. So we analyzed the results of people that had mentioned and the people that did not mention, and it was a major result. 23% of the effect was do the driver's pledge. So I don't know if I answered your question. We would love to have two groups with the tries and not with the fries. So we did all the bars that had nudges, they had the driver's pledge, and then right away decided they would receive the fries.
The incentive.
The incentive. The idea is like to do the scalable one without this incentive. So I think one idea of randomized control trials, yes, many people don't do in small samples and, oh, this is not scalable, but it was so insightful for many other experiments from that moment on. Even like for non-profit organizations, and here in Brazil, like it was inspiring for many other experiments, and then for this we are very happy, and also inspiring for the scalable solution that we designed together. But so the idea is like sometimes we don't do because the intervention is not that scalable, and I think and I defend a lot the idea that we should. Yes, like because we need to. The experiment makes us have a very close eyes in the details, the data, the journey mapping, and everything. So all the diagnoses can help us a lot in designing scalable solutions. Yeah. So.
Well, no, thank you. I'm so excited that you're really leading in the area of public health, especially. So thank you so much. I truly appreciate the report on how well and the efficacy you had, and it's very exciting that you will scale and hopefully start creating, maybe leading the rest of the world in reducing this type of harmful behavior and indirect death.
Nowadays, we have a project that is a very nice one we can discuss later with conscious consumption of the youth. So we are using this data, the whole mapping that I showed you guys for conscious consumption of alcohol in the youth. So we can chat later also, like all the insights will be very helpful, but it did already happen. Yeah, so we are working in other topics, in drinking, driving, conscious consumption of alcohol.
Thank you so much. It's a true pleasure to meet you. Thank you.
So thank you, Carissa.
All right, conscious of time, we will have to end now. But thank you very much for your wonderful presentation, and thank you all those attending who asked the questions. And we will continue with the next session shortly.
Thank you very much, and I'm very glad. I'll continue here to see Carlos talking